Forest fires may seem very destructive, but did you know that they provide the opportunity for other species to grow and thrive? Hi, today's lesson is going to be on secondary succession. So, secondary succession is the return in stages to a stable climax community, starting from an area that has had its vegetation removed, but not its soil. Now, this can happen from a variety of causes, such as forest fires, deforestation, tornadoes or hurricanes, or flooding. Also, urbanization. So, this is any event that destroys the ecosystem but leaves the soil intact. Um, so, the trees, grasses, and animals have been removed, but the soil is still present. So, although very few organisms are left after one of these events, the ecosystem must develop again, but the soil remains intact and is infused with nitrates, organic matter, and so it's the perfect microclimate for decomposing bacteria. So, secondary succession is much faster than primary succession because the humus rich soil already exists. So, if that secondary succession can take hundreds of years to get from rocks to lichens to grasses, the process of secondary succession can take tens of years or dozens of years to get to a climax community. So when we look at secondary succession, one of the ways that people have attempted to preserve the beauty of national parks and the safety of visitors was to prevent and extinguish forest fires. But this ended up altering natural systems of fires, which ended up leaving more fuel for larger, more disruptive fires to erupt. So typically, fires would go through ecosystems, burning the underbrush after lightning strikes and similar activities. Native Americans that lived here for centuries also routinely set fires to refresh ecosystems and start the process all over again of secondary succession. So naturally occurring fires are part of forest ecosystems because they remove old, dry and dying trees. Now, not only does this help prevent disease from spreading through weak trees, but it releases new seeds from pine cones, promoting new growth, and recycles nitrates and other organic matter back into the soil. But in national parks, we changed this natural burn cycle, so it not only altered the structure of the forest, but the animal communities who live in the ecosystem. So when forest fires are prevented, succession continues indefinitely. So now there's fewer grassy meadows because the larger trees succeed them through succession. So we end up with a lot of areas of climax community instead of a mixed ecosystem national park. So with fewer grassy meadows, the populations of large herbivores typically will decrease. Because those large herbivores need to consume grasses, they don't have enough of a food source. Now, if the large herbivores decrease, then this has a consequence on the higher levels in the ecosystem. So top predators like bears and cougars have been pushed into towns and settlements in search of food because their natural prey isn't in high they don't have a high source of natural prey. So other small herbivores end up feeding dangerously close to roadways where the shrubs and grasses still exist due to mowing to maintain roads more safely. Then this will also draw predators into that area. And then we have an issue with both vehicular death as well as human interaction with large predators, which can be harmful to the humans in the short term and the predators in the long term if they become too aware of and reliant on human food sources. So, in an effort to avoid the negative consequences but still ensure public safety, forest rangers and parks officials now use controlled burns instead of completely preventing fires. So, often if you're driving into a national park, you might see signs that say the smoking area, controlled burn, or they might close some campgrounds because they're doing controlled burns in certain areas at different times of the year. Now, these are carefully supervised and regulated fires set in certain regions, often far away from town sites, just in case any uncontrolled wind kind of whipped up the fire, and it helps rejuvenate the forests while protecting the cities and towns from massive out of control fires. So if you keep the backcountry ecosystem in a steady state of succession and with little fuel for forest fires, then those fires aren't likely to spark and spread into town sites. So proper forest harvesting techniques also helps ecosystems because if we move those large mature trees for pulp and paper industry, um, this can create small clearings in ecosystems, which allow sun to reach the forest floor, which can help rejuvenate different um, animal and plant species that need that sunlight on the forest floor. Certain ecosystems you don't want to remove the large mature trees, like coastal rainforests, because those mature trees are what keeps the ecosystem stable. So it really does depend on what type of forest you're looking at. Now, clear cutting is going in and clearing all the trees out of an area. Now, this can replicate what happens after a fire, but one of the ways that you must kind of complete that then is to kind of burn all the slash so that organic material and nitrates go back into the soil, and then the seed pods are released and open back up so they can hopefully grow back into a new forest. You can also have a shelter wood cut and a seed tree cut. So a seed tree cut is ones where you kind of go in and take out trees, but you leave their seeds behind to help replenish the forest. Now, by law, logging companies are required to practice reforestation programs where they must plant a certain number of trees. But ecologists will often argue with this because it interferes with naturally occurring succession. So replanting creates a monoculture of trees in specific rows as opposed to letting natural selection decide which vegetation is best suited for the area. So often as you go through and you cut down a climax spruce forest and then you go on and you plant spruce saplings, well, those spruce are typically shade-loving plants. So they don't often grow well after being replanted because the first tree that would grow in a succession after a forest fire is going to be sun-loving aspen or pine trees. So those spruce often will not be very successful and grow slowly, and whole forests might die in the events of a drought or an insect or parasite infestation because it's a monoculture. So in Alberta, we have a debate regarding forest harvesting techniques and balancing again those economic progress and environmental protection, which is sometimes why ecologists will put a monetary value on different organisms. Now, although most advantageous for economic purpose, environmentalists argue that harvesting techniques do not follow the principles of sustainable development. So, sustainable development must meet the needs of the economy without um, compromising the needs of the environment as well as future generations. That was today's lesson on secondary succession. See you next time.